Well, hello everyone, and welcome to BizBuzz Week 6 meeting, where we are fortunate enough to have the honor and privilege of getting to host and learn from some current Lakers marketing professionals, Diane Lent-Degele and Taylor Geas. I'm hoping I'm saying that right, but thank you for joining us tonight, guys.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. We're thrilled to have you, and we also appreciate all of our members for joining us tonight in attendance for the special learning opportunity, especially given that midterms and all that are going on right now. And also, side note, I apologize if my internet cuts in and out at all. It's been a little funny lately, but without further ado, let's get into our meeting tonight. So real quickly, we'll just go over a quick agenda. So we'll go over some of what our next play will look like and some brief announcements. Then I'll introduce our esteemed panelists, lead a little bit of our discussion featuring our executive board. And then at the end, we'll do over 20 minutes of open audience question and answer with the panelists. So we want to try and get more of you general members involved and talking with these professionals that we get to host. So I'll make sure to try and moderate that so we can keep it on task and whatever. And we ask that you please try and use the raise hand function during that time, or feel free to type questions into the chat at any time. All right, so you guys have all seen this a million times. I'm not going to read through it, but just a reminder of our attendance policy. It does influence your chances of field trip participation, especially as we start to get more back into in-person activities and whatnot. And then real quickly, looking at next week, before we get into tonight, we'll be hosting Tom Fewer, a UCLA alum who studied poli-sci here, who is a current freelance executive producer, commentator, director, and public address announcer and consultant in the broadcast media industry, and he has experience at quite a few Olympic Games. So we look forward to hopefully having you guys back this time next Wednesday as well. All right, but what's most important right now is the people who are with us here, these Lakers professionals. And so first, let's talk about Diane a little bit. Who is Diane? All right, so Diane is currently a digital marketing coordinator at the LA Lakers. She graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Visual Communication from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. She also received her Master of Arts in Sports Management from the University of San Francisco, which is where currently one of our alums from the club, Hillary Fu, shout out Hillary, she was a former VP here who is currently in that program. Diane has also worked as a freelance graphic designer, doing some branding for various stores and businesses. She also did some branding for MLB corporate sponsors. And she previously has also worked as a designer at Pen and Public, where she did some branded identity creation and some digital and email marketing. She also worked as a graphic designer at Lime Green, where she did some front-end web design, print advertisement design, and some corporate identity design. And before becoming a digital marketing coordinator while with the Lakers, she started as a digital developer associate. All right, and who is Taylor Geas? She is currently a copywriter at the LA Lakers. She also has served as a copywriter for Publicis, the Books Company, and Petco. And while at Petco, she made this really cool billboard over here. I'm a big Boston fan, so I like seeing this, where she did the All About Pets campaign and also worked on the Roger Goodell billboard, saying that Goodell shops at their competitor PetSmart. So I thought that was a really cool advertisement right there. She also worked at Carling Black Label, where she led the #NoExcuse campaign to help end abuse against women. That was while in South Africa. She also has received her master's degree in media theory with a focus in creative writing while in South Africa at the University of Cape Town. And then as an undergrad, she got her bachelor's degree in psychology from Endicott College. All right, so with this introduction in mind, I'd like to now first ask Diane to share a little about herself and what her path to success looked like. And then I'd like to hear from Taylor, if that's all right, and we'll go from there. So Diane, if you don't mind starting first, maybe please share with us a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So you guys kind of got a very in-depth background of my work history right there. But basically, I went to School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I studied design with a minor in textile design. And I had my heart set on like Mad Men style, working for an agency, being like a creative. And I did that for like 5 years, and I kind of hated it. And kind of thought to myself, like, what do I actually like? What am I passionate about? And I've always like loved sports. So I decided to go get my master's from the University of San Francisco. And I did their remote program down in Orange County, which allowed me to work for the Lakers full time. So I would be with the Lakers all day. And then I got my master's at night. And that kind of veered me in the direction I am now. I'm still doing a lot of the stuff I was doing when I was working in advertising. But now I get to focus on like actual projects that I care about, which is super helpful.
That's awesome. And then I'll throw the same question over to Taylor, if that's all right.
Yeah, just let me say you guys are so thorough and great. I was like, oh my God, where'd they get that stuff from? but thank you guys. My path is also interesting, like I'm sure most. I went to school to play soccer, so I'll admit to you guys, I wasn't super focused on studying and, you know, life after college and what I was going to be doing. I'm actually from Boston, Massachusetts, which I know is interesting because I now work for the Lakers. I was raised a Celtics fan. Yeah. I'm a Lakers fan now. After college, I enrolled in a graduate program, and I had a professor come up to me and tell me, you know, hey, you're really good at writing. You should pursue this, like lock into it, da, 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 da. Thank God for him. And then there was a writing program in South Africa. I had spent pretty much most of my life in New England. So I jumped at the opportunity to, you know, go out and see the world. And while I was over there, I started working for an advertising agency while I was going to school, just writing full time. And then I got back to the States and just kept my bag packed, pretty much moved over to California. And I've been writing over here ever since. Started just keeping track of the funny stories and different encounters I have on a blog on my website. And then, yeah, one thing led to another. And I was approached by a creative recruiter for the Lakers, and they converted me, beat the green out of me, and now I bleed purple and gold.
There you go. I'm a Celtics fan as well, but I got a lot of respect for the Lakers, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of flip-flopping now, I'll ask this to Taylor first, and then we'll ask the same to Diane. Could you kind of walk us through what your typical workday looks like?
Totally. I don't even know what typical means anymore, to be honest. So we'll start there. But I think probably, Diane, I don't want to steal your answer, but one of my favorite things about working in marketing, and then specifically creative, is that no day is the same, right? Like you have consistency and, you know, standards to meet, but there's really no routine in terms of anything. Like, you kind of always got to be on your toes. I'm going to steal your answer, Diane. There's been countless times where we'll sign a player or something will happen and it's like all hands on deck, like drop what you're doing. We got to get assets out for this. And then we all contribute to that in some way. But yeah, for the most part, I guess like an average day would just consist of like campaign planning, talking back and forth with our corporate partners team. We worked pretty close with them throughout the course of this season, just with everything being digitally based, not having fans in the arena. So just keeping in contact with them, and then, yeah, just, you know, figuring out what message to leverage on which of our channels.
Absolutely. Same question for Diane.
Yeah, so I'll second that. Like, just be ready. You know, it could be like 10 o'clock on a Sunday and all of a sudden your Slack is blowing up and it's like, okay, I got to get to my computer like ASAP. Sorry, my dog is like really hyped up right now, so I apologize. But other than that, I would say my schedule is a little bit more regimented than Taylor's is, just because I work on like the app, web, and email messaging side. And so a lot of our stuff is content or information that needs to go out to fans. So we're able to schedule that a little bit more. Like, I know I have to send a bunch of stuff out every single game day, so I can plan ahead for that. But a lot of my day, I do a lot of coding. I do a lot of Photoshop work. I do a little bit of copywriting. I kind of coordinate things to go out on our like digital channels, like our app and our website and things like that. So basically like anything digital in that sense, I'm kind of working on, along with my other team members to kind of make sure that happens. And that can be anywhere from like prepping wireframes or like putting up press releases. So it really sort of depends on the day. And then obviously off season for both of us is a little bit different, just because, you know, it's more about planning and getting to the things we actually want and need to get to instead of just like reacting. So yeah, it's a lot of things.
In thinking about off season and all that, how would you say your off season looks like compared to the regular season, Diane? And then I'll ask the same thing to Taylor.
So for us, like since I deal with a lot of like digital products and then like our consumer base and like subscriber base, the off season for my department, product and digital, is where we focus on like cleaning out our records and doing all the like technical coding stuff that we just didn't have time to get to during the season. So we have like a very long running list of like, you know, this web page needs to be updated, we need to recode this form, these kind of things like that, or we need to go through our subscriber base and clean the data, which doesn't sound very exciting, and sometimes it's not. But you know, for us, I think there's like a misconception that like when the season's over, everybody just goes on vacation for 3 months. And I know from my personal experience, that's not the case. Like sometimes the off season, especially like free agency, is like the busiest time of the year. Like there's just a million things going on. So it's like a different cadence, but it's still the same level of like focus, I would say.
Yeah, very cool. And how about for you, Taylor?
So I must admit that I will have been with the company for 2 years in September, but because of COVID, I've never had a proper off season. So I can't tell you exactly what it will entail, or what it has entailed. But what I foresee, I do a lot of campaign work with the Lakers. So I think just probably my summer is going to look like working on free agency stuff, I would say, and then just, you know, planning for start of the season next year, stuff like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking about like a lot of that free agency stuff, would you say, and this can go to either of you, would you say that that's typically like your biggest press releases and stuff like that?
I will, with the caveat of the 2019-20 season had so much chaotic stuff happen for our team personally that goes above and beyond like anything we've done. So this is my 4th season, and usually like our big PR moments are like free agency, and then when the schedule gets released, and then the trade deadline is always very, very stressful. And then, you know, any kind of playoffs, anything. But obviously last season we had, you know, we kicked off the season with the chaos of our China preseason, and then the stuff with Kobe and the league shutdown. And it just felt like all hands on deck literally all the time. So, you know, it's hard to say. In a perfect world, you know, free agency is our big to do.
Absolutely. Taylor, would you have the same to say, or any other things you'd like to add?
No, yeah, I think I'm in line with Diane. Last year was just my first year, the only thing I can base all of this off of, and it was unlike any other year in my professional career. So yeah, I think for the most part, just expect the unexpected while at the Lakers.
I think
Stay ready. Yeah.
Expect the unexpected. That's a good takeaway, especially for what's gone on the last year or so. So I'll ask this one to Taylor first. What would you say is one important lesson you've learned from your time working with the Lakers?
I've learned like so many lessons. I think just the biggest like thing for me and the best part of my job is just seeing how when everyone contributes to something and like everyone, you know, has a hand in a project, like how powerful it can become. A lot of times, like coming from an agency world or just even on a smaller team in-house for other clients, it's very interesting how like siloed everyone is, and just, you know, kind of like you're checking a box for your job. At the Lakers, like it's very much, you know, how can we make this come to life? Like, how can this person add this to it? How can this person add this? And it just really creates like such cool environment, like such cool space. It's so inspiring for like everyone involved. So yeah, I would say just the biggest lesson would be on and off the court, as cheesy as that sounds, is just having that like team mentality and just getting everyone involved and, you know, like doing your part, but also kind of having that snowball effect and like empowering people to do theirs as well.
Nice to hear how collaborative it is. And how about
Yeah.
for you, Diane?
Oh yeah, you have to understand our department is 20 of us in one room, so we're collaborating whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
But I would say like on a personal level, I think the one thing I really learned quick my first year was like learning a skill is never like too small of a thing. Like I have now ended up sort of doing so many different skill-based things in my job. Even though I only started out like doing coding, like learning how to best copyright and learning how to like do A/B testing and all these little things, like learning how to like use Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Access, like I was a designer. So in my mind, I was like, Microsoft Office, this is not my problem. But they are really actually important things to learn. So like even like Photoshop and After Effects, like even if you're not using them directly, like it's really helpful in a collaborative setting to understand other people's processes. So like I might not use After Effects, but like when I ask for a project from our motion graphics designer, like I understand what it's going to take for him and what like a legitimate turnaround time is. And that's always super helpful, just because otherwise, you know, you don't want to ask for too much and then say, I need this by tomorrow. So, you know, understanding that makes things so much more helpful, like in a collaborative setting.
Absolutely. Definitely like that piece about learning a skill is never too small of a thing. I think that's something we could all definitely apply. I'm also kind of curious, and I'll ask this one to you, Diane, first, and then Taylor. How has your guys' office environment changed, if at all, since winning the NBA championship?
So we haven't seen each other. We haven't been in the office since March of 2020. So all of the championship stuff happened remotely. In some ways, it's made everyone like more motivated to like top ourselves. Like I know the team feels that way, but I know like for us internally, like we want to just like keep pushing ourselves to like do the best work we can and like put out the best like graphics on social we can and just like continue to like push ourselves. Like I don't, and Taylor, you can like correct me if I'm wrong, I don't feel like anybody's like felt complacent like after winning. Like maybe also because we only had 6 weeks off in between seasons, so it kind of just felt like rolling right into the next one. But I mean, yeah, I think it kind of 2020 was so chaotic for us, but it ended in such a good way that I think it really brought us all together. And I think, you know, we were already kind of like Lakers family before, but now it's kind of like gone to the next level.
Yeah, totally. I think, I don't know, there's just been so many like trials and tribulations. And when you have to face that, like it really does, it makes you resilient yourself. But yeah, with your team, like you just know who has your back and like who you can depend on in so many ways, like professionally and personally. So I think going through, like Diane said, like such a challenging season and then like having the work pay off for a championship was just such a high for everyone that like, I know me personally, I thought as I was working through playoffs, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait until like this thing is over and I can chill. And then the minute the thing was over, I was like, what's next? And I was like going to my boss and I was like, I'm thinking this, like I'm thinking that. And she was like, you need to relax. Like we're not doing this stuff right now. So it's definitely like pretty funny. And then actually like when the high wore off and I kind of like came back down to earth, I was like, okay, like just stay focused. Like championships aren't guaranteed. Like just control what you can control and do what you can do. So that's what I feel like this time's been about, is just really staying grounded, you know what I mean? Like not staying grounded, staying like humble as a group, just trying to produce like the best work. And I guess all like the one thing that I think is so contagious across our department is like professional development. So I feel like during this time, everyone's been like, how can I get better on behalf of the team?
No, absolutely. And I like that theme of like the wheels just keep on turning. That's like how you guys are so successful as an organization, or I'm sure like one of the factors, obviously. And so Taylor, this is for you, and then I'll ask Diane next. But how do you guys kind of decide which content works and which content doesn't work, like on the internet and just like in the sports and entertainment world in general? Like, is it a gut instinct, or do you guys like analyze it using like charts and other analytical tools?
I would say it's a little bit of both. So everything like at the end of the day, from a creative standpoint, does come down for instinct, does come down to instincts, like on behalf of our designers, even on behalf of copy. Sometimes like you just, understand that you've been doing this for a while and like you're good at it. So just like be confident in your skills and put it out there. Obviously, like there's certain scenarios where you're like, ooh, okay, it didn't really land well with people, like not going to do that again. But for the most part, yeah, I feel like we all have a mix of resources that we rely on. So lots of data. We have like a whole data and analytics team that like if I'm proposing an insight for a campaign, I'll check in with them and be like, hey, can you guys check sentiment on this for me? Or can you run this through our social channels and see like what our fans are saying? So definitely like numbers driven in some parts, but like if I'm writing a script, I'll think of a topic and I'm like, oh yeah, like this really aligns with, our brand values or a brand insight of ours, or perhaps like this target audience over here and like this part of LA, like they'd really connect with this. Like, let's try it out. So it's a little bit of both, I'd say.
Definitely. And how about for you, Diane?
Yeah, I think so because I'm dealing with like more web-based stuff, my approach is a little bit more analytical, just because like I can see very clearly if I use two different subject lines, like which one resonated because less people open the other one. So we have things like A/B testing, where you can send, two different pushes or two different subject lines, and, it'll tell you which the fans are responding better to. But I think also instinct, I mean, I've been doing this for 4 years, so I have a pretty good sense of like just understanding what our tone is like as a brand and how we need to come across and what the fans relate to. I think I like to hope I made more mistakes in my first year and now I'm just, in the zone. But you just never know. And I think, the Lakers as a brand, is very strong and traditional. So we have a very set, tone, I guess. So, fans know what to expect from us, which makes our job a little bit easier.
Definitely. And this goes to both of you, considering the team you're playing tomorrow night, the Clippers. Like, speaking of tone and messaging, how would you guys say yours varies from theirs? And like, maybe what are some things you guys feel you do really well and maybe things that you think they do well as all like also?
So I don't really like compare anything I do to like any other teams, honestly. Like, especially like I can't speak to social, so Taylor, that one you can handle. But like for me, I like at the end of the day, my job is like to get messaging towards the fans. So I'm not thinking like, how can I be the wittiest person? Like I want our fans to know like, hey, we just signed so-and-so, read about it here, and make that process for them as quick and seamless as possible. So like I will look for inspiration when it comes to like aesthetics, and I will see what other teams are doing and be like, oh, that's super cool and totally works. But we have like the most talented designers ever on our team, and we have people like Taylor. So, I kind of feel like we're really firing on all cylinders at the moment. So it's, hard to find a fault, which I realize is biased. But yeah.
It's good you guys have that confidence.
I do try to always be the wittiest person in the room, so I can speak to that. No, I'm just kidding. So a lot of what I do is like in the weeds. I am constantly apologizing for like, oh, I'm sorry about the semantics. I'm sorry about the semantics. And then the other day I finally realized that my job is like 90% semantics. So I'm pretty much in the weeds with just tone and messaging and and what, like how ours is different from other teams, and like why ours should be different from other teams, and like what our personality is compared to other teams. So where I wouldn't necessarily say we're like comparing ourselves to the Clippers, I think it is pretty interesting if you take a look at both of us, like just how distinct we both are. And for so many reasons, right? Like we're a storied franchise, like we have a history in the NBA, you know, we've really made a name for ourselves. And I would say the Clippers are just more of like new guys on the block in LA in some ways. So that in and of itself just separates us in terms of like the message we're getting across. And then also just in terms of, yeah, like the success on the court, like we've just had, you know, some of the greatest players in the league come through our doors. So I would say that that just helps in terms of like going through what narratives we want to share and stories we want to tell, and how that will be different than theirs. The one thing I will say that like I love that the Clippers do, and I think is so smart, is they're very specific on their target audiences and like how they're reaching them. Like I had read that they wanted to get into schools more, so they were doing stuff with like Clippers backpacks, like, and it's just smart things like that, yeah, that I think is like just really important, especially for what we're doing in marketing, as ways to like kind of plan ahead and have like a vision for your brand.
No, absolutely. That's really cool to hear. And kind of in thinking about like for the people on this call, what advice would you have to like college students in our shoes to try and get into like the marketing world, particularly the sports one? And I can ask that to Taylor first and then Diane.
Honestly, like this isn't the most profound answer, but I just feel like little things like this, right? A big thing for me that I kind of like look back and I cringe a little bit because I'm like, oh God, you're so embarrassing. But also like, I'm so happy I did, is I was just always like down to reach out and down to talk to people that like I hoped that I'd be in their shoes one day. And some people are like, I don't have any time for you, like get out of my face. And then other people will be like, I'll give you 10 minutes. And then some people will be like, yeah, like let's talk, let's do this. And just like I don't know, like it's very funny. I pinch myself still that like I can't believe I am working here, but it's very attainable. Like you just kind of gotta like just keep moving forward. I told Paul on like our initial call that I kind of just like said yes to everything in like the professional world. I was like, yeah, I could do that. Oh, like, and people like bosses would ask me, like, do you know how to do this? Like, fake it till you make it. Gain as much knowledge, like stay humble. And I don't know, I feel like if you're meant to like land a career in sports, it will happen.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where that like having all these little skills comes in. Is it looks really good if you can be like, yeah, I can do that spreadsheet for you in 30 minutes. And then that person knows who you are and is thinking about you next time that like they have a task, whether that's like your boss or like a volunteer job.
Yeah.
But I guess I have a couple of thoughts on this, which is I think, so I went to grad school. I was like on the older side, but I was in grad school with a lot of people in their early 20s, which is great. But I think a lot of them weren't sure what they wanted to do in sports and like specifically what job they wanted. And my advice on that is to like not only reach out, but like understand what different positions are doing and what's expected of them, and like how you would see yourself in that role, just because, you know, sports marketing can entail so many different things, and one job might be great for you and another one might not be a great fit. And once you have that in mind, it makes it way easier to like focus on connecting with the right people. In this case would be like the people having the jobs that you specifically want, as opposed to kind of casting a wide net and saying, I'd like to learn more about, you know, these broad things that you're doing. Just because I think, you know, it's great to hear advice on like sports marketing in general, but if you're like, okay, I want to be a copywriter in sports, and you're reaching out to specifically copywriters, that's going to help you a lot more than sort of talking to a lot of people broadly. And then the other thing I was going to say is I think it's also helpful to expand your idea of like what sports marketing is. Like, I think it's really easy to get caught up on like, okay, there's 4 major leagues. If I'm not in one of these major leagues, like I didn't make it. But, there's so many other leagues. Like Los Angeles has so many teams, whether it's in women's or men's sports. There's the Olympics committee, there's the Special Olympics. Like there's so many things within sports marketing that aren't like a major league team that are very worthwhile and you may end up like loving. So I think, at least for me, like I know I've gotten in that mindset of like, before I got this job, like, if I didn't, I'm from San Francisco. So I was like, if I don't get a job with the Giants, like I didn't make it, and I think that's like a very toxic mindset to have, just because like you shouldn't put all your self-worth in like one thing that is like not necessarily attainable at all times. But there's so many things out there that I think if you like open your mindset, like can be super helpful. And those are also helpful stepping stones. Like if you go into a job interview with a major league team, you can say, I worked in the WNBA. I know this stuff like the back of my hands. And that will definitely like put you ahead of other people. Sorry, I just rambled on for like ever.
No, that was so good. And I want to finish my answer too, because that was so great. That was so smart and so spot on. I just like going off what Diane said, which is so spot on. I think also too, like, I remember when I was in college, and it's such an impressionable time, right? Like, I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but your heads are probably spinning and you're just like, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. You're getting filled with like so much information from so many places, like societal standards, probably like your parents' standards, like friends' standards. So you're probably like, I should be doing like this, and this. Like, oh no, like this sounds cool because I hear like this person and this person talking about it. Just like check in with yourself sometimes, because I never checked in with myself. I feel like I was always moving so fast that when I landed in copywriting, it was when like a professor pulled me back one day and was like, hey, listen, and like made me check in. So that's really big. And I know like it's tough. Like there's a lot of moving pieces and there's a lot of pressures to have a job and get a job. And especially in this climate, like how are you ever going to find a job? But just like take a breath for a second. Like it's all going to go according to plan. Like you don't need to feel the weight of the world. And then the other thing what was the second point you made, Diane?
Broadening your horizons when it comes to like what you envision as like a sports career, because
Oh yeah, I was gonna actually bring up an intern we had with the Lakers. Her name's Abigail, and she came in as a photographer, right? And she's just like this brilliant, like super cool photographer. And me specifically, I'd be like, no, Abigail, like you're gonna write some copy, like we need you to write some copy sometimes. So I'd pull her in that direction, and then she like kind of like flexed her copy muscle too. So now she's going back into the work world with like as a unicorn, and she can flex that. And so where I'm going with that is oftentimes like you'll experience imposter syndrome, or probably like this discomfort in the work world where you're like, oh my God, I absolutely like I'm staying in my lane, and that's that. Like you can make mistakes, that's totally fine, but definitely like go outside your comfort zone as much as you can.
Definitely. We've heard in a lot of meetings lately about this imposter syndrome and stuff like that. And I have one quick question, and then this will be my last one. We'll fully open it to whoever wants to talk, obviously. And we have some questions in the chat that we'll get to. But in thinking about kind of like that imposter syndrome and how sometimes, I think all of us can relate to that on some level or whatever. And so what I'm curious is, when do you feel like you kind of got to a place in your career where like you feel pretty confident about who you are and what you do? And I'll ask that to Taylor first and then Diane.
Just gonna be so candid and honest with you guys. I feel like I'm like, I feel very capable in like every task, but I wouldn't say I'm confident or like comfortable. And the minute I do get comfortable with something, I feel like it's almost like a weird boredom thing where like, nope, got to get uncomfortable again. Like I want to start trying this. And I think it's just, that's what I'm saying. Like always just like step out of that zone. But imposter syndrome can come in like so many ways. When I first started, I definitely was like, oh my God, they're gonna know who I really am and let me go. Like I can't be here, right? And it's not as bad anymore as that. Like I'm like, oh, I belong here. Like, this is great. Like, I love my team. I fit in with my team. It's awesome. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely like days where you'll have a meeting and you'll be talking to, someone from leadership on the team and my voice shakes a little bit. I think that's just like, that's part of the job. And that's just something like lean into that discomfort. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I like that. And how about for you, Diane?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think like the longer you're in a position, obviously the more capable you feel just because, you've been through it. So like I feel capable just because like, after this year, it's going to be half a decade, which is crazy. So, I feel like very confident with what I'm doing, but like, I remember when my first year, okay, I will also be candid. Sometimes I would make a mistake at work, which in retrospect was like not a big mistake, but I would get in my car and like start crying and be like, they're going to fire me. Like, I wasn't perfect. I didn't do everything like the way it should be. And like, that's a really bad mindset to get into. And, I think, and I can't speak for Taylor, but I know for me, like this job was like such a big deal. And I was like, I can't mess up. Like, I can't do, I have to prove that I'm like so good at everything I do. And I think that's, don't get yourself in that mindset. Like, it's okay to make a mistake, own up to it. But like, those are the things that like build you into understanding like how to do your job the best you can do it, because, now I'm not going to do it that way. And this is what's expected of me.
Yeah, I'd say mistakes are good, honestly. I mean, like,
well, not too many mistakes.
Oh yeah, don't be an idiot. like definitely like think through. My friends at work now with, especially with social, because social is just like, as you know, it's like when it's out there, it's out there. They're always like,
okay,
all right, Taylor,
Taylor, you can delete it. If I send an email with a mistake, it's out there forever.
Yeah. No, but like the Twitter world will see it and they will hold on to it forever. So my friends at work are always like, Taylor, like, just think through the risk. So like always like think through the risk and everything, but like mistakes for the most part, like not that I welcome them, but I try not to beat myself up about it. I was like you, Diane, where I was like, oh God, like, why are you this way? Why are you that way? But like the more mistakes you make, like I don't know, the easier it comes to me now. And I'm just like, I can do this with my eyes closed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just like for me, if I would make like a bunch of typos, then I would force myself to take other steps of like, okay, when I do this next time, like these are the steps I'm going to do so that doesn't happen. And naturally that helps you to just get better and better.
Yeah.
So it sucks at the time, but it does help.
Definitely. Yeah. It sounds like some good learning opportunities. And then looking at Paul's question in the chat, he's curious, in the people that you work with, do you find that most of them are specialists who are in specific roles, or are they mostly kind of like generalists who are flexible and can help out wherever needed? I'll ask that to Diane first, and then Taylor, if you want to add on.
I think it's a combination. Like, I think I'm in a very unique position because like I started when our team was a lot smaller. I think we've doubled in size in the last 4 years for our marketing department. So when I first started, like just by nature, I took on a lot of like other responsibilities. So I ended up, doing much more of these tasks that weren't as specialized. But I think now, not to say that like people help out and it's very collaborative, but it's a little bit more specialized than it was. And like, you don't have like our coder is not writing copy, you know what I mean? But it's also, I think in our department, a lot of people have like technical skills that aren't really applicable. Like I can't edit videos. So, those guys don't write copy, they don't do code. So we help out like where we can, but I think especially our department is very like skills based. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Yeah, like we're all I would say inherently like specialists, but I think just from like I was saying earlier, the team mentality standpoint, like I can't hold a camera, like I take pretty bad photos, but if all the photographers were out, I'd be like, all right, give me the camera, you know what I mean? I feel like that goes for everyone on our team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see another question in the chat. Actually here, Adam raised his hand and then we'll get to some questions into the chat. So Adam, what would you like to ask?
Hi, Taylor. Hi, Diane.
Hey,
can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm a huge Laker fan. I have 3 of these Laker masks around in my house right now, so I think that
Perfect.
puts me in a solid tier of Laker fandom. Uh, you guys touched on like working during important events like the trade deadline and free agency for the Lakers. So I was wondering if you guys could just touch on that a little bit more and explain like what it was like during those events or any of the main events that the Lakers have to go through during the year.
Yeah, so I mean, for trade deadline is always like my least favorite time of the year because you these agents work 24/7 and you never know when a deal is going to get done. So you know, like I said, you pick up Slack at like 11:45 at night, and just by the nature of like this is your job, you kind of have to like drop everything, which sucks because like you just can't really like you can't plan to like go out to dinner, or you can't plan to like do all these other things just because like you have to be by your computer. And it's one of those things where like you kind of know like, okay, this is like the trade window, so I know I need to like be on alert, and this is like a sacrifice that I'm, you know, making because I love this job, so it's fine. um and things like that. Yeah, like I hate to say it, and Taylor, you can like back me up on this, but sports is not really a career where you can just do your 9 to 5 and clock out and turn off your phone. Like that's just not going to happen. You kind of just have to be alert at all times, which can be a blessing and a curse. And it like really rears its head during like trade deadlines and signings. The signings during the summer are a little bit easier because they kind of happen like more spread out. Just because, you know, the first day, like once free agency happens, there's a bunch of stuff that happens, but then it's kind of like a slow burn. Trade deadline is like a very quick, like you just have no idea, and everybody's waiting usually for the last day, and you're like refreshing Woj like a million times, like trying to prepare and get ready. Because you just, you know, he knows before we do usually, so you just never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I would say
Woj or Shams, both.
yeah, but yeah, Twitter is just up with everyone. Yeah, I would say same kind. It's just like organized chaos, honestly, during those times where we've all like been there before and we know the assets that are needed. We know like what our each of our responsibilities is, but like we also, you know, want to make it special to the player, like special to the moment. So like how can we do this differently? Like, are we, you know, getting permission on A, B, and C from everyone? So it's a lot of moving pieces all at once. And yeah, like Diane said, my friends like scorn basketball now. They're like, God, like we can never do anything. I always have my laptop on me, like always like I'm always checking my phone, and they're just but like they tell me like you're not a surgeon, you're not this. I'm like, no, like I am.
Yeah, it's true. There is, you know, friends and family, like you're working on holidays, you're working during the summer, you kind of have to just make it up to them in other ways.
Yeah.
Your guys' work is very important, so it's comparable. We appreciate it.
Well, I have a lot of doctors in my family, and I don't think they would feel the same way.
Yeah, they might not like hearing that as much. So I see Dennis had his hand up next. So Dennis, would you like to go ahead?
Hi, thank you. My question is already in the chat, but I just want to come out and say hi to both of you and say thanks for coming out and talking about your story. And it's great to meet more people from the Lakers, as I also met Elizabeth Wells a couple of months ago at another event. So anywho, my question is, which is already in the chat. My question is, what kind of qualities or certain experiences do you look for someone that wants to work marketing for the Lakers or in sports marketing in general?
So I think it's hard to say. I think it's really specific to the role that you want. So like for my team, it's going to be different from what Taylor would want. Just because I work, you know, heavily on our website and our app and emails, like, you know, we would be looking for somebody who like knows how to code, but that wouldn't necessarily apply to somebody who wanted to be a copywriter. So I think it goes back to like finding specifically like what kind of role you want makes it a lot easier, just because then you know like what you need to bring to the table. And if there's such like a wide breadth of roles, you know, like if you're on game entertainment, that's like a totally different like background And it doesn't necessarily have to be like super strict. Like I know one of our coworkers on game entertainment was working like in community relations before and applied for the job. And, you know, like there are some stuff that's not like concrete on paper that you wouldn't think transfers, but like it will help. Like if you're working in community relations, like, okay, so you know how to work like with people, with like live events because you're working like benefits and stuff. Okay, that can apply to game day. And I think it's important to like get that across on your resume just to show like, you know, this may not seem like it's super related, but like here's how it applies to the job that I'm applying for. And I think like a cover letter is a great place to like put that, just because it differentiates you a little bit. Because I think it's really, I feel like envisioning how your skills apply to the job that you want is super, super helpful.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking. Yeah, that's honestly another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. I have a cousin of mine who's she's actually just about to go to college, and she's like choosing her college. And I feel like that's the other thing too. Like, don't make yourself fit the job, like make the job fit you, which is like what Diane's saying. So you like, even if it sounds cool and this and that, like on paper, make sure it fulfills you. And that will come from you asking yourselves, like, what do I like? Like, what can I bring to the table? What can I recognize in myself? What can others recognize in me? I think that's extremely helpful. And then I think just more than anything, I would say like for any team, just not job specific, but just like for any team that I'm a part of, like I just want tireless, motivated people always. I think like, and I can't say that any of you are not that, because you are in a meeting at 7 o'clock, 6 to 7 o'clock at night. So it's awesome. You guys are definitely go-getters. I've talked to Paul, and that kid is just unbelievable. So I'm sure you guys all share same mentality as Paul. But yeah, just like tireless, motivated people, yes people, like just like I said, like just when you're starting off in the workforce, you're gonna get like a lot of requests and asks, even if they, you know, intimidate you a little bit. Just say yeah.
Yeah, that's some awesome advice. Thank you. And looking at another question in the chat, Jamel, I hope I'm saying that right. He asks, what are your thoughts on the common adage, don't work for your favorite team? And do you ever feel pressure working for one of the most marketable sports franchises in the world? So I guess we can go to Taylor with that first, and then Diane.
I've never heard that before. Don't work for your favorite team. So I don't know.
If you want, I could add some context. We heard it, especially back in the fall, from a guy named Greg Bonacorsi, who works for the Dodgers, who said that oftentimes, like, people can let too much emotion get involved when they work for their favorite team, just because there's so much rooted there, like in their personal history. And so that's kind of what they mean by that, I think. Like, it could interfere with
Okay. So I disagree. I have so much emotion when it comes to, and this, like, obviously this isn't the team I grew up with, but I think like passion and emotion is very important. Obviously, like, stay professional and, like, you know, draw the line somewhere, but I think that goes a long way, and that really helps you. I don't know. I would say that it's great working for like a team you love, honestly. And where I didn't grow up with the Lakers, I feel like they were very familiar name in my household. And it's so funny, when I first started working here, I always tell this story, Diane, but I was reading Lakers books to just like get more context and like kind of learn even like deeper about the history. And it was like I was reading a Celtics history book. Like, the two just go hand in hand. So I think maybe one thing to stay cautious of like working for your favorite team is just your first impression when you're starting. Like, people think working in sports, even people ask me this day, like, oh my God, do you get to go to every game at Staples Center? Do you get to watch every game at Staples Center? And like, yes, I get to go to every game at Staples Center. I do not watch the games. Like, I'd be surprised. I'm like working so much and like looking all over the place. Sometimes I'm like, did we win? Like, is it over? So I think maybe like that's one thing to keep in mind, is you're not going to be kicking back and like watching the sports games. Like, you very much are going to be working.
And I will say, yeah, I sort of second everything you just said. And also, I don't know if we're the right people to ask because neither of us grew up Lakers fans. I'm from Bay Area, so I was not.
But our two good friends did. Our two good friends did that are great employees at the company. Yeah.
The one thing I will say is, so because I work on my computer, I don't go to Staples, but the one thing, and I don't know if this happens to you, Taylor, but like, so before I got this job, I was like a diehard basketball fan and I watch basketball like all the time. And like, I still love basketball so much, but like, if I have a stressful day at work, the last thing I want to do is watch basketball or a Laker game because it like reminds me of like the stressful day I had at work. So like that is a possibility because you can't like differentiate yourself at that point. Like it's all like your life now. So, you know, if you're somebody who really wants that separation, it's hard, I think.
Yeah, that's such a good point. If you want work-life balance, don't work for your favorite team. But definitely if you're down to like I'm the same way, Diane. Like if I go 110%, I'll go 110%. And if I like need a little breather, it's kind of like, okay, I like read basketball books when I'm on like this and that. And then when I need to go off, it's like, what is basketball? Like I don't even honestly look in the sports direction.
That is certainly, yeah, that's interesting to hear. So we're curious, and this one's directed at Taylor, and then I have another question for you after Diane. But Taylor, do you think being an athlete, like when you played women's soccer back in college, do you think it's helped you understand the organization as a whole? Like, do you feel there are any similar experiences in your life or in general that would have given you the same perspective that you're able to get from being an athlete? And this was asked by Anthony.
Yeah, I think just overall, like the standards that were set, I think it's just the fundamentals from being a college athlete. And then I would say just the job market in whole, it's just really influenced my attitude. I would say like, I'm just kind of like do your job, like get it done. Don't make excuses and stuff like that. I would say that's kind of, it's just given me like more like judgment, I would say, in the sports market, not necessarily because like it's sports, just because like I've had coaches that were hard on me. So like now, like in my professional world, I'm like hard on myself. Like I have high standards for myself, like very like achievement driven. So I'd say that probably had the biggest influence, but I wouldn't say like, I would say it's more of an attitude thing, not really like the skills I've learned on the soccer field. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's good to hear that it translates. Some of us are current student athletes as well on the call. So it's nice to hear that those skills are translatable into the real world.
Yeah. Just like working with coaches and then just like networking with people and, you know, that you have like a competitive edge, I would say.
That's awesome to hear. And this one's for you, Diane. This is from Alana. What do you think are some of the pros and cons of working in the sports industry? And the second part of the question was asked earlier, but if you wanted to add on anything more about qualities you think are best for this specific industry, like sports in general versus the other ones.
So the pros and the cons. I mean, I think like as stressed as we may come across about our jobs in here, like I'm going to speak for you, Taylor, sorry. Like we respect that like only a few people in the world get to do what we do. So like as mad as I get sometimes and stressed as I get, like I'm still like very, very, very grateful. And like, you know, I recognize all the like great things that have come out of this, you know, like we got to be a part of a championship. Like that's something I never like would have thought would have happened in my life. And yeah, I mean, I get to work with like, you know, I think when you're working in a very intense environment, like you really bond with the people on your team, which is like a big pro of working in sports because you're kind of like all going through it together. So, you know, that's something special that I've worked in a lot of places and that's not necessarily the case. As far as cons go, I mean, we've mentioned it a couple times, but like you kind of give up your life and your free time. And that's like an unfortunate reality. Like, to be frank, I haven't taken time off since September of 2019. So to put in perspective, like there's just a lot going on all the time. And like, you know, you can't just be like, oh my, a perfect example, one of our coworkers was a big Coachella guy for a really long time. All of his friends are going and he would come into the office and be like, oh, my friends are posting from Coachella. Like I have to work this weekend. Like it sucks. And it's like, yeah, like that, unfortunately, like that's the reality. Like you end up giving up a lot of your time. And you know, that's the trade-off. But I think that's also a very important thing to know if you're up for before you start your sports job journey. Because, you know, some people it's hard. They not having a 9 to 5 and just being able to clock out and enjoy your weekends and weeknights, you know, that's not for some people. But, and then I can answer the second part, or we can move on to another question.
Yeah, I feel like we already kind of touched on that a little bit, but that's definitely really good advice, especially on that part about knowing what you're signing up for. So I'm certain we all really appreciate getting to hear that. And also a question just popped in the chat from Kenny Nwuba. He asks, how do the players treat you guys? Like, and how do you guys interact with them? And is there like a lot of interest in working with them? And yeah, how's that look? Could you guys kind of expand upon that? I'll ask Taylor first and then Diane.
Yeah, I mean, the players are just like straight up professionals, like so kind to us. The best thing about the Lakers and like what we've said, you know, a couple of times about like being a Lakers family is we just try to like respect the guys and like respect what they do. So we're not, and that comes from like the top down, like we don't have access to them all the time because like they're, you know, their job for us is to perform on the court. Like their job isn't to like talk with us and like, you know, give us content and everything. We do have like set times where we can we have a media day at the beginning of our season, so we'll chat with them then and, you know, take photos, get videos, have interviews, do all that. And then if we have like one-off requests throughout the year for like all-star stuff like that, we can make a request and see if they're available to talk to us. But yeah, I've like seen them around and we met them on media day and they're just like super nice guys, like so normal. There wasn't one that I was like nervous around or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like we don't really interact with the players like on a very regular basis, like at all. Just because, you know, they're so busy doing their thing. But, you know, when we do run into them or like we see the coaching staff a lot more than the players, like, you know, they understand that like our job is to help them as much as possible. So, you know, they're always like very nice. But yeah, I think, you know, I think maybe there's like a misconception that like if you work for a team, you Taylor, I'm sure this happens to you, but like people like in my life will jokingly be like, how are you and LeBron? It's like, I don't really talk to LeBron, but I'll, you know, keep that in mind.
Yeah, my grandma one time was like, my cab driver in the Caribbean is a huge LeBron fan. Like, could you get him an autograph? And I was like, no, like, absolutely not.
Does not work like that. that is pretty funny. Well, out of respect for everyone's time, this will be my final question to the both of you, and then we can wrap it up. It's kind of a two-part one, but it goes well together, which is what is something you wish you had learned at a younger age? And then kind of like thinking about that, what advice would you want to leave us with tonight? And I'll ask that to Diane first, and then we can end with Taylor.
Okay, it's gonna sound like so cheesy, but I wish I would have just like, I think I set so many like very intense goals for myself of like what I wanted to accomplish so quickly before I had like understood what goals I was making, if that makes any sense. So like I think I talked about earlier, like I was so driven to like go to art school and like go on this path and do all these things. And, you know, I was working towards a goal that I didn't really know anything about. And I wish I had given myself more freedom, especially like in college and like right after I graduated, to sort of like figure out what I wanted. Not to say that I like wasted time working in advertising, but I think if I had had more time to like not necessarily see the world, but see the work world or like understand like what my options were, I think it would have made things a lot easier, and I wouldn't have stayed at jobs I didn't like because I felt like I had to. So that's one big piece of advice is, if the only reason you're staying at a job is because you feel like you need to be in that job to move to a specific position, don't do that, because you're just going to make yourself miserable. Obviously there are other contexts, like we all need money to survive. So obviously I'm not talking about that, but I think it's easy to get in the mindset of I have to take this miserable job so that I have it on my resume so that when I apply for this other job, I can do these other things. And not to sound corny, but your time is so valuable, and it would be heartbreaking. Don't be okay, well, in a year I can move on and do these things. Try and figure out what you want to do and then go do that, regardless of whether you think it's going to help you in the future. Because it's not worth being miserable for a year. That's one thing I wish I could have told my younger self.
Definitely. And thank you so much for being so candid with that. We appreciate it. How about for you, Taylor?
Mine's also gonna probably come across as cliche and cheesy, but I think it just sums it up perfectly. I feel like I always tried to fit a mold, and I said, just check boxes with everything, and it really just comes down to being yourself and just keeping things natural, keeping things authentic. And then when you're more in line with who you are, I promise you will always arrive at where you're supposed to be professionally, personally, everything like that. I feel like so many times in life, we're all oh my God, how have I not done that yet? Why didn't I do that in the past? And we just are so incredible. We're our biggest critics and we beat ourselves up. And I just remember trying to choose a college, and even the factors that came into choosing the college that I did. And after college, that same cloudiness of what path is the right path. I promise you in life, there is never a right path. There's never a right decision. I read something one time about how the most intelligent people just commit to a decision and they make the most of it. And that's where a lot of really cool opportunities and skills in yourself come from, is, facing these challenges and problems in life. I used to be I don't want to mess up, or I don't want things to go wrong. I can't fail, but failing's so cool at the end of the day. All my stories that I tell about the past and moving out to California and failed, and but then I figured it out, you know what I mean? So yeah, I guess just kind of take it easy on yourself.
Can I add on to that really quick?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I think, as you can see with me and Taylor, the majority of people who work with us at the team and people I know who work in the sport industry do not have a linear path, directly stepping stone. I went to this university, I did this thing, I got this job, and then I did this job. The majority of people kind of, nobody just is on this straight trajectory, and that's okay if there's different steps that go to the side before you get to where you need to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really appreciate that. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off everyone to just kind of understand that life's going to happen however it's meant to. I heard this quote once where it's man plans and the universe laughs. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen when the universe wants it to. And I think that's a really good note to end off on for tonight. We really do appreciate the time and wisdom you guys shared with us, and we'll certainly keep it in mind. So on behalf of everyone here at BizBo, we're very grateful for you guys joining us tonight. So thank you so much.